This is my introductory speech for Comm 101. My name is Drew Anderson. I am majoring in psychology. Some of my interests are puzzles, hanging out with friends, working out, watching TV, and I also really like to read. Right now, I'm reading Stephen King pretty exclusively. I'm trying to read all of his books. So far, I've read 34, which is quite a bit, but I still have a lot of ways to go if you know how many books he's written. Um, my most embarrassing story is when I was in the ninth grade. I was in a wheelchair from a injury that I'll tell you about in a minute. But it was my first day back from being out of school, and I wasn't very good at the wheelchair, so I was rolling to class and I was rolling to class, and we had an outside class, so I had to like cross the street, and I hit a curb, and my wheelchair fell over in front of everybody, and some stranger had to come help me and help me get to class, which I found really embarrassing at the time, but now I realize, I just needed help. It wasn't really that embarrassing, but I got in the wheelchair because of a skiing accident. So I was 14 and I was going skiing, and it was March, so the snow wasn't that good, but I went anyway with my family. And on the first run of the day, I was going way too fast and I couldn't stop. I was trying to do, if you know how to ski, there's the french fries and the pizzas. So I was doing pizza all the way down and I couldn't stop. And then the last like 10 seconds or so before I hit the tree, I don't really remember, but I do remember making myself fall and I hit the tree. And my first thought was, wow, I wiped out. That's so embarrassing. And then the second thought was just pain. And I was screaming for help. And finally, someone called and they're like, "Do you need help? Do you need us to call someone?" I was like, "Yes, call someone." And so they put me in the sled, got me down the mountain, and got me in the ambulance. And while I was on the mountain, they were asking what my parents' name was, and I was saying Don Anderson. And apparently, when they were calling on the loudspeaker to try to get my parents to know that I got hurt, they were saying John Anderson. And so my dad, after like a couple times hearing it, he had a feeling. So he went to go talk to the people who were calling and asked, "Hey, are you saying Don Anderson or John Anderson?" And they said John Anderson. And he was on the phone with my stepmom at the time. He said, "Oh, thank God it's not Drew." And they're like, "Oh, wait, did you say Drew?" And he was like, "Yeah, yeah, what happened to him?" And they couldn't tell him because of liability, but they said, like, "Oh, that's him in the ambulance. He has a slight deformity in his leg." And my dad couldn't even drive to the hospital because he was so freaked out. My stepmom had to drive, and she's afraid of heights, so it was a whole big thing. But yes, that's my worst injury story, and I have plenty of scars. I had to get 3 surgeries from it, and I was in a wheelchair for 6 months. It was a really bad break. I am from Burbank, California, born and raised. I'm taking Comm 101 because it is a requirement for my major, which again is psychology. And then my life goals and my school goals. So my school goals is to transfer to a UC in the fall. I already sent out all my applications and just waiting to hear back now. And then after graduating from there, I want to go to medical school in the hopes of becoming a psychiatrist, specifically a psychiatrist that specializes in addiction, working with rehabilitation centers and treatment centers and sober livings and all that. That's my goal. Um, One interesting thing about me that you might not be able to tell just by looking at me is that I'm actually transgender. That means that I was born a female and I've since obviously transitioned to male. And yeah, and one of the most interesting things about that, I think, I mean, I've lived life as a female and life as a male, but just a funny little aspect is I was actually born with the name Drew. And as a child, I didn't like it because everyone thought it was a boy's name, but now I feel so lucky that I didn't have to change my name. So yeah, so that's my speech. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to watching all of your videos.